I'm so excited to welcome my guest today, Gail Kachaki, to the Redeem Her Time podcast. Gail and I were actually introduced via a mutual friend. So I love that, when we are in kingdom work, that God allows paths to cross in very interesting ways. And we've definitely hit it off with very similar just ways that we look at business and all of that. So you guys are going to be blessed and challenged by this conversation today. But first, Gail, I just want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. And let's just start. Tell us a little bit about you, right? I know we heard your official bio in the intro and things like that, but who is Gail and what are you juggling in this season of midlife?
Well, thank you. I am so happy to be here, Alyssa, with you. This is very exciting. So, a little bit about myself. I live in New York we are empty nesters with my husband and my sweet pup, Gracie. And I am a kingdom business mentor, a speaker. I have my own podcast with God as my CEO. But my heart, what I'm truly here for, my mission is to help women entrepreneurs sharpen their decision-making skills and steward their operations with excellence as they reach out to magnify their kingdom impact. And this is really birthed out of, and I know we have similar stories here, so it makes it so interesting and fun, a journey I went through myself in
Okay,
entrepreneurship.
well, let's dive into that because I love that part of it because often, right, God uses this, what I call the breadcrumb trail, to be preparing us all along the way for what it is that, He's calling us to in this season. So, kind of take us a little bit on that journey about how you got from whatever you were doing before, wherever you want to start, to what you're doing today with what you just described to us.
Sure. So I spent many years in education. I actually taught accounting at a community college and I loved it. And I can just say the Lord unexpectedly called me out of it. I can
Hmm.
look back on that now and see that. I had thought I would stay there, retire from there. And I opened up my own business. At that point, it was called the Savvy Scholar. And what I did was I worked with high school students and their families and helping them make a transition to the right career, college, etc. So I have to admit, full transparency, when I did this, one of the reasons why I opened up my own business, because I wanted to be my own boss. I
Yes.
wanted to do it all. I was tired of dealing with the institutions and the rules and the regulations. I had an MBA,
Mm.
a CPA, all this background in business. So, how hard could it really be, right? Was the thought. And I stayed in the academic area working with the students. And I found it was probably 1,000 times harder than I thought. And yes, the business was slowly growing. I had to get used to no paycheck anymore, no typical paycheck and the benefits. But it was hard. I
Mm.
was feeling very stressed and tired. I was always searching, even though I was growing my base of clients. I just felt tired. I felt that something was incomplete, something was missing. I was a big victim of FOMO,
Mm.
fear of missing out. I
Right?
was on the online world and there's so many things and there's this and there's that. And I was signing up for every class and trying, a very hard worker. And even though I was doing all that, even with all my years of teaching, the enemy attacked me with the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure I was where I should be. And I just felt this general lack of security about my career growth, my meaning, my purpose. And I have to tell you, I spent many years in leadership and prayer ministry. So I was praying
Mm.
for people in my church. I was praying, yes, in my business for the students and their parents, sometimes on very
Okay.
different places, right? But I was not praying for the growth of my business, for my role in the business, for the meaning, the purpose. And what I have learned since is because I wasn't doing that. That just
Mm.
resulted in this total lack of focus, poor decision making, and I was doing everything my way.
Yeah.
And yes.
I think we can all relate, right? Because you're right. I mean, so many of us have been in some kind of, a structured environment before going into entrepreneurship. So whether that was education, that's where I was as well, or whether it was, working in corporate or working for some other organization, you're right. All of a sudden we jump into entrepreneurship and it's like, woo, there's no limits on me. And, it feels like now we have all this time And yet I think what I heard you saying was we can then fill that time with a lot of things that aren't necessarily moving the needle, increasing the ROI, that are really moving us in the right direction. They're just taking up time, not bad things, that you listed. But it's interesting because when you talked about like praying for other people and praying for the people in your business, but not really praying for your business. I want to dive into that a little bit more because I know like this is something that's really dear to your heart. You and I are actually, in a mastermind right now on prayer around our businesses. Why do you think it is that so many of us, as believers, we're praying for all these other things, but we don't pray for our business, or we do only to like a very, shallow or surface level?
Yeah, I think there's lots of reasons for that. One of them, I'm starting, and while I don't mean to blame the church, I love my church and everything, but it is not something we hear about very often in the Christian community unless you go and search for it.
Mm,
So while we are there, and that's what I was praying for others, spent years, in that ministry, but yet I was separating something I was doing. And I think part of it is just that we don't understand that the Lord has brought us to where we are for a purpose. And once we realize that you're not just here by accident, if you can agree that you were called and you feel like you're doing the right thing, then the Lord has put you there. So this is not separate from anything else that you do in faith. And you're spending a majority of, or a large part, most likely, of your time, particularly when you're starting to grow a business in this area. So if it had not been for the Lord working in my heart in multiple ways, bringing some great Christian mentors and just really showing me what was lacking, I might still be sitting back there
right.
because I would not be doing what I'm doing today for sure.
Yeah.
And, when I started on this journey, I had no idea where he was actually going to put me, where I was going to end up, because I
Mhm.
did eventually, as I got deeper and deeper into the understanding and the knowledge of the importance and worked with other women, I realized that my time working with students was at a close. I gently closed that up, and that he really had positioned me to instead share the journey I had been through with other Christian women business owners.
Mhm.
So he worked my heart in multiple ways, but the solution that I found was that I had to give up control to the Lord,
Ooh,
actively partner with him to grow my impact. And that was really hard.
yes.
Hard for me. I think many entrepreneurs, and I do specifically work with women, but everything I talk about today is geared for
Sure.
men and women. Um, but when you've got this idea and you want to serve others, it's really hard to let go. But what
Mhm.
I learned was when I did realize it was truly his business, I could actively partner with him to grow my impact in so many better ways. I mean,
Right.
it was I was strengthened once I knew he was in charge. All those feelings that I suffered, that I talked about earlier, I was expectant, but there was less stress on me. My
Mhm.
focus changed. I
Mm.
was focused on excellent stewardship. I operated through a God lens, which made those decisions easier. I got excited instead of being tired. I
Mm.
was re energized about growth. I felt confident. So much for the imposter syndrome, because once you know that you are called and equipped for his purpose in this place and time, it's all different. And finally, I felt really protected
Mm.
because I have a prayer hotline, as you mentioned earlier, at my fingertips. He's there for me.
Yeah, what a beautiful picture, and as you were telling your story, I was thinking about where I was when I was first in business as well, where I would spend that time with the Lord, right? I have my place on the couch. I'm sure a lot of us have like our favorite place with our cup of coffee and maybe a blanket if it's that season. And it's just kind of that place to meet with the Lord. And while I was really enjoying that intimate time with him there, it very much felt like when that was done, I like left him on the couch and then I
Yes.
went to my office to go do my business stuff, right? And then the next morning I would show up and we would do this. And so I too, it was this, like I wasn't connecting the two together, right? Or I was just kind of like saying, yes, I'm called to this, but not really living like it when I was actually doing my business. So I want to dive a little bit into that solution that you talked about, which is letting go of control. And this, we talk
Yeah.
about this around time because a lot of my listeners
Yes.
are good at some level with their time management. I mean, some of us, we know everything's out of control and we're just drowning. But I think a lot of women with our time, and so I'm going to use this illustration, then we'll transition it to the business. We've got things under control. We're managing, right? It may look on the outside like things are put together, but what happens is that we put a time ceiling on ourselves. We actually cap our business when we are managing our time and those decisions, right? Because we only have so much capacity. We can only do so much, right? And so what I really help women do is to take that lid off, right? By letting go, right? And so when you talked about that, like letting go, this is what I want to dive into, because when we let go of controlling and managing our time, God exponentially, makes it so much more fruitful than when it was on our own. And in the same way, right? I'd love to talk a little bit more about when we let go of our business and, this is my idea or my baby, and this is how I think it should be done and things like that. What does that do? How does that take the lid off of, where we've kind of put ourselves when we're trying to manage it on our own?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difference that changes everything. And when it was really placed in my heart that I was to share this with other women, of course, especially with my educational curriculum development background, I was like, okay, Lord, but how? And what I did was I came up with a business framework. And the business framework is based on the word impact. I love acronyms.
Me
So I
too.
put the word impact, and it's anchored in scripture. And I'll just run through this very
Yes, we'd love to
quickly.
hear it.
But the I stands for insight. So you have to use biblical principles to be the guide to build your business, to keep your business going. Psalm 127:1 tells us the Lord builds the house. So
Mm.
we have to use his word. The M is for management. Well, if the Lord is in charge, whether you use the word CEO or head of the company or manager, he is in charge. And in Psalm 24:1, we're told he owns everything.
Mm.
That's our business. That's what I had to get through my thick skull. The P is prayer. And I love to think of you have a hotline. You can communicate with your CEO. Who can do that in
Right,
business, right? Out
right.
in the secular world. Jeremiah 33:3 says, call to me and I will show you things you do not know. Yes, through prayer. The A is for attitude. So we always need to be refreshing our mind with God's promises. Negative mindsets are an arrow from the enemy. So Romans 12:2 reminds us, renew your mind.
Mm.
The C, we both work with this, stands for community. Spend time
Mm.
in community with other business believers. And Hebrews 10:24 talks about that. And then the T is actually for testimonial. So the way I'm using testimonial, though, is to say your business must be focused on the people you serve. Let the Lord's light shine through you. Be a
Mm.
testimony of his light. And Matthew 5:16 tells us all about doing good works and shining his light. So this is the framework,
Mhm.
but this is what our goal is. But then the next part I work on is the how.
Exactly. Right. Yes, exactly. And I love that because that's also what we talk about here at Redeem Her Time is we're not just trying to increase the ROI in our time just to feel good about ourselves or just to check another box or just to reach a certain level, in our business or, things like that. While there's nothing wrong with, setting goals, like you're sharing, it all has to come from a heart of number one, this is not mine. Number two, it's what I've been called to. So I'm to be faithfully stewarding my time, my business, also the other areas of our life. And number three, like you just said, it's all for his glory, right? And so as we increase our ROI and our time, we see an increase in our impact because we're not just, chasing all the squirrels and shiny objects and things like that, or doing all the things the gurus, business gurus tell us to do. We're listening to the Lord. Where do I focus my time? Where am I supposed to connect with my best client and things like that. And, then in turn with increasing our impact, what follows that is also increased income, which allows us then to overflow, in generosity and share the light with him. And so I love that. And, tell us a little bit more, because here we talk about we are the CEO, and we've defined that as a Christ empowered operator, but I love the way you say it because it's really the same thing, just reworded. So tell us about God as the CEO and what that looks like, that partnership looks like.
Sure. So when we're talking about that how, right? And I love when I love your podcast and I love what you do because you talk about the heart of God, but people can hear that, but then they need to know how to implement that. And you give such direct advice and instructions in your individual podcasts and everything you do. It's like bringing it into practicality. So, and I know we both focus on that because lofty goals are good, but they remain lofty without the meat.
Yeah.
So there's like three major steps that I talk about to magnify impact and freedom. And yes, the first one is exactly about what I call developing a master's mind priority. And you mentioned the prayer powered mastermind, but this is questions that we ask. Like, why is it so hard to give up control to the Lord in the first place? I mean, you and I just touched on right the tip of the iceberg. Why? Because it's hard. How can we focus on using a God lens? What does that mean? Because we are so used to, we were born, we're of the world, and we're so used to doing things our way, but yet he wants us to look at things his way through everything we do in our business. So that's a big area that's important to understand. And then the other piece of this is understand how God is growing you and I in our roles today from the inside out. How is he strengthening our faith? And then how can we bring that to others?
Yes,
So
good.
that's just some of the questions to ask about
I
actually
love
giving
that.
up control.
Yes, yes. And I think that's where we get down into the heart of it, right? Because
Yes.
it's not just about, it is there, strategy is important, systems are important, all of that's important. But if it doesn't have that rootedness in our heart, it's just going to look like the rest of the world. And so I love how you dive into the heart, as well. And then we're taking inspired action, right? Then we're not just, checking boxes or doing things. It's because we know this is, like you said, what we're called to and how we're stewarding that. And I always say entrepreneurship and business is a sanctifying process, right? Just like marriage, just like parenting. This is going to challenge you. It's going to, it's going to make you question what you're even doing and why you're doing it. And, if anything's even working and all of that. And so I think it really just drives us to our knees, right? It literally makes us
It,
go,
it,
I can't do this on my own.
it's crazy because, once I got to the point where I realized that he was the CEO, then my next point or my next question, because again, I have a very methodical, practical mindset was, so then what do I do? Hello.
Okay.
Like if I'm
Yeah.
not in total control, what do I do? And I think you just used the term stewardship. And that's the next thing we focus on is excellent stewardship. And the first question is, well, what is my role now as a steward?
Right.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
How do I focus on it? Where is it in the Bible? I happen to love Matthew, but it's all throughout. But Matthew is one of my favorite places. Matthew was a business person, a hidden tax collector, but he
Right.
still was. And how do we focus on that? How can we actually take things in the Bible and make them real life every day in
Yeah.
our business?
Yeah. So I'd love
And
to hear, like, how has this changed your business, right? Because you were on that other side of doing it on your own, went through the process of letting go, still probably in the process of daily letting go. And, so what have you seen? How have you seen it change things in your business? And I would love, if there's any ways in which you've seen it even affect directly your time in your business by letting God be the CEO.
oh yeah, well, I can tell you right now, it definitely affects my time. That is huge because that whole fear of missing out, I don't have that anymore. If
Yeah.
there's something that I'm considering doing, I thoughtfully take it to the Lord and I
Mm,
pray about it. And the thing is with prayer, sometimes you don't get your answer right away in our time as we want. I
right.
take it to others for confirmation. But any choices I make, I take to the Lord. So boy, let me tell you, that's cutting out all those other things, the fear of missing out and this and that, because I find when you put yourself in the word, whether it's through prayer, whether it's through using biblical principles. This all works together because you are in relationship with him during this time. And when you are in relationship with him, he put you in this business for a role, for a reason, for a unique purpose. And when you are working with him closely, he's going to make it as easy for you as possible. Remember, always in his way and his timing, but
Right.
it makes a huge difference. And the stress, I mean, when I really let go, to let go of that stress is amazing. It's
Mm.
amazing.
We talk about that. And we talk about, letting go of managing our time. When you are managing something, you're trying to keep everything under control. And just when everything gets under control or looks like it is, something pops out of place, or something, comes in out of left field, and you're playing whack-a-mole all day long trying to get things back in line. And that's really overwhelming, frustrating. It's a lot of, it can feel like all that responsibility is on you. And yet when we steward, whether it's our time or our business, it's the open-handedness. It's the
Absolutely.
receiving the gift and then letting it flow out right out of our hands. It's not, I'm grabbing on once I get the gift, right? But it's this, okay, I'm letting this flow and be, and produce, a harvest in the lives and businesses of others. So I love this. I'd love to hear, just if someone's listening today and she's like, I want to let him have control, but it's really hard. And I do too, kind of like struggle with the, what am I going to be missing out on or whatever? Like, what's one piece of an encouragement that you would give to that woman to, who maybe be struggling and who wants to take that next step?
Yeah, this is simple. I'm going to encourage them to find it a little bit of quiet time and ask the Lord. It's this simple. Is there something I am holding on to that truly belongs to you?
Hmm.
That's how you start. And then you keep asking, keep asking. And when you get that answer, ask him, go back to him and ask him to help you let it go.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's an ongoing question we need to ask, because we can let it go one day or maybe 1 hour or maybe one moment. And then it's like we grab it back out of fear or out of, just wanting to, thinking that we have, the right answer, that kind of thing. And so I think it's the continual asking of that, which, is so beautiful. And then that opens up space for God to work and move in ways that are well beyond what we could ask or imagine and what we could do, on our own, which
And
is
community too. Community helps because we will always be human, right?
exactly.
So in those battles we have, like you said, where we have to continually come back and ask the Lord when spend time with other business believers, we can support one another. We can
Yeah.
share how hard it is. And I think community is the second essential piece
Yes, yes,
after a
yes.
relationship with the Lord.
With those who are like-minded and pursuing similar things, right? Because yeah, there is a difference in the way that we're building business, and it can be entrepreneurship can be very lonely. A lot of people that I listen to and I work with, and I know listen to this, are solopreneurs, right? We're one-man shows, and so it can get very lonely. So yes, I love the community. So speaking of which, that's where we like to take the conversation off of the podcast, so we can really get into the what am I doing with this? Like you said, not just this is a great idea, but like, how do I do this? So I always invite my guests to be inside the community the week that your episode comes out, so we can have more of that conversation and help interact with people who are listening. So I encourage you as listeners, go to the Redeem Her Time podcast links, and you can grab the community link. It's redeemhertime.com/community. And come on in. We're going to be having conversation throughout the week about God being our CEO. What does it look like to let go of control? How do we, steward our business and our time instead of trying to manage it all and things like that? And so I'm excited to continue the conversation. But I know people are always curious about how they can connect with you and, if you have a free resource that can help them get started. So where do you want people to go besides coming into the community?
Yeah, I think, well, I do have a website, which we will have the link in the show notes. But one of the easiest ways to start, and you can do this if you have the opportunity before the podcast shows up in the community. But I just have this, it's like a 3-minute, very quick and easy, free, online impact assessment.
Hmm.
And you just answer a couple of questions. You just answer 6 questions and you automatically get a response. And that would be a great thing to bring with you to the community also and say, this area I need to work in. Do you have any recommendations? So I just think that's a wonderful place to get started. And
Yeah.
so simple.
I think so too, because I always say awareness of where we are is the first step. We can set lofty goals. You can decide you want to go to Disney, but if you don't know where you're starting from, you're not going to get there, right? So the same thing happens in our business, in our faith, and with our time, in any area of life. We have to assess where we are and where we want to go, where God is leading us next. And then we can start mapping out the how, to get from where we are to there. So yes, I encourage you guys, we'll put the link to that in the show notes. So go over, take Gail's impact assessment, and then come inside the community and have a great conversation with us. So speaking of great conversations, Gail, thank you. This has been really fun. I got to be a guest on your show. So you guys can go listen to God is My CEO and hear our conversation over there, and follow her show over there as well. I love getting to talk to women in business who have a heart for really making an impact and stewarding the gift that God has given them, whether it's with their business or with their time. So I always like to end with this question, just to get into your heart and calendar a little bit, right? In this season for you, what is something that you're wanting to make time for or make more time for that really matters to you?
Well, that's an easy one. As we're starting to get into the last quarter, right, of this year of 2024. But I would really like to make more time to work on some new ideas I have.
Hmm.
I have a couple of new thoughts, and the Lord just keeps kind of dropping them on me here and there. And I have to admit, sometimes they get put on the back burner.
Yeah, taking time just to be quiet and be with him and see what comes is really a great use of time. So, and then it's going to benefit everyone that gets to, be part of those great ideas. So I love that and encourage you to definitely make time for that. So thank you for being here today, Gail. I appreciate you. Thank you, all of you who are here listening. If you're thinking of a business bestie that you have who, this would encourage, challenge, bless, please share this podcast, because so often I have met, people that I needed to hear from because somebody else shared a podcast with me. So I encourage you to do that. And let's help more women to steward their time and their business, and be the CEOs and, have God as their CEO. So thanks everyone for being here today. Thank you, Gail. I appreciate you so much.
It's been a pleasure.